Arrowhead and Zurich have teamed up to offer multi-line package coverages at competitive prices. We're bringing new life to ambulance insurance. Learn more at arrowheadgrp.com/ambulance.
The Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety and its researchers at its center in South Carolina are focused on mitigating losses via the science of safe building, testing to see what materials and methods can withstand Mother Nature's worst. In this interview with Insurance Journal's Andy Simpson, IBHS President and CEO Julie Rochman talks about why mitigation is important to everyone and the role state building codes play in mitigating damage and saving lives.
Preventing losses from natural and man-made disasters are important for several reasons. Number one, it's good for the economy, where businesses and communities aren't destroyed. They continue intact. So tax-based jobs, livelihoods, lives, communities are all preserved. It's good for the environment. If homes aren't burned up or blown down or washed away, it's much greener. In fact, we have a phrase that we use called going green and building strong. They should be compatible. It's important for government because where losses are prevented, the size and the scope of the disaster are greatly reduced, so they're saving money they wouldn't otherwise have to spend. And that's obviously a big issue right now at the local, state, and national level in terms of budgets. And above all else, it's good for the people. It's good for an individual who lives in a vulnerable area, whether it's their business or their home. We all live in vulnerable areas in one way or the other. And most people who've been through a major disaster sort of define their lives and their careers as before that large event and after, whether it's Joplin or it's the Waldo Canyon fire or it's Sandy or it's Katrina, Tuscaloosa. Life is never really the same after a major catastrophe. People think they want to get back to normal, but there really isn't any sort of normal. So for us, the best answer, the only answer, as individuals, as a community, as an industry, as a country, is to try to prevent those losses in the first place. It's the best thing for everybody. It's important for people to understand that statewide building codes are a minimum threshold. The building code is not a terrific building standard. It is literally the legal minimum at which you can occupy a building. And so to think that there are 13 states out there that absolutely have no minimum legal standard for the habitants of a home or the occupants of a business is really startling, I think, to a lot of people. There are several other states that have statewide codes but don't really enforce them. So what we wanted to do was to show people in a kind of a shorthand way how to assess the quality of building stock in a particular state. Just in order to compare apples to apples, we started with hurricane-prone states, so the 18 states from Texas to Maine. We looked at 47 different data points that really fell into three categories. Number one, is there a statewide code? Number two, is that statewide code enforced? Because enactment of a law is good, enforcement of the law is even better. And then third, are the people who have to really live the code and implement the code trained? Are they certified? Are they educated? Do they know what they're doing? Is there a recourse? Is there a license on the line for a consumer who's had a bad outcome? We created a 100-point scale, 100 being the best, and we had scores everywhere from 95, which was Virginia and Florida, all the way down to 4, which was Mississippi. And I will say that the report is meant to be used as a guideline for states to improve. So we laid out exactly what they would need to do to earn more points on our scale, and we've been very gratified that public policymakers and reinsurers and other people have looked at the report and found very creative ways to use it. I'll give you two quick examples. In Mississippi, we've been fighting for a statewide building code for many years, and there's a coalition of state leaders down there who have said in no uncertain terms that our report was the impetus for a more active, more energetic push for statewide code this year. They're actually optimistic about getting it done. There are federal agencies that have looked at the report and asked us, why is it that states' building stock performs this way when the code is actually good or bad? So it's become a shorthand document that opens the door to conversations about how to make things better, and that's really a very positive outcome. Clearly there are areas in our country where people have moved, sometimes decades ago, sometimes more recently, that are highly vulnerable to wind, water, fire, earthquake, lots of hazards. And the question arises oftentimes after a major disaster, for example, after Hurricane Katrina, even after Hurricane Andrew, which I remember from 20 years ago, should we allow people to go back there? Should we allow them to rebuild? And there are a lot of local reasons, jobs and economic issues, that people will say yes. we can't move people from all highly vulnerable areas. It doesn't make sense. We're not going to relocate New York City. We're not going to relocate Los Angeles. We're not going to relocate Miami. But if people are going to live there, they need to take some personal responsibility for the way they build, the way they maintain their properties, the choices that they make as a community. And there are going to be consequences of doing that. I think probably in some ways harsher consequences going forward, because we as a society just don't have the ability to keep printing disaster relief dollars without regard for the financial consequences to the larger community. At IBHS, we try to take all of the best building science and put those pieces of data or information or knowledge into usable, actionable items. So if we study something and we don't translate that into something that people can actually pick up and use, it's sort of a waste. One of the actionable elements that we've created is the Fortified Building Standard. And it's the Fortified program looks at existing and new homes. We also have a guideline for commercial buildings. The idea is to give architects, builders, contractors, homeowners, insurers, public policymakers an ideal against which they can work. So we have a Fortified for Safer Living standard, which is sort of an all-hazard, all-in. This would be a fantastic house to live in from the ground up. But what's really been catching on in several states is our Fortified Home program, which is a retrofit program that's in stages. In this economy, we found it was easier to talk to homeowners about relatively inexpensive and easy things that they could do to harden their home, to make it stronger and safer. And so in the Fortified Home program, there's a bronze level, which is really all about getting the roof right, most important thing that any homeowner can do. There's a silver level, which takes into account opening protection. And then if you go to gold, it's really, at least for the hurricane version, just to be specific, it's about tying the structure together, getting the load path right. And what we're hoping to do, and we're having some success with, is getting builders to buy into the fact that quality construction is a marketplace advantage. And we're seeing that. We also have federal agencies and states that are now getting behind Fortified in very meaningful ways. And I think over the next few years, we're going to see this program take off in a big way.